So tonight what I want to do is talk a little bit about the nature of worry specifically, talk a little bit about anxiety, because these are things that all of us experience, but for a lot of people don't really understand what exactly is going on or how they work. So tonight's about shedding light on these experiences to help you get a better understanding of if you experience excessive worry, get a better understanding of what might be going on, what might be contributing to it, or if you know someone in your life who experiences excessive worry or has difficulty with worry or anxiety, help give you a better understanding of what they're experiencing and some of the things that they might be dealing with that you may not be aware of. So let's start by talking about worry itself. Now, the thing is, we all worry. Worry is a universal experience, and there's a variety of things that people will worry about. People will worry about minor matters like punctuality, getting places on time, directions, where I'm going to find parking. They'll worry about finances, worry about work, relationships, health, terrorism, global economy, all sorts of different things that people will experience with regards to worry. And as I mentioned, worry is a universal experience. Everybody worries at some point. So women worry, men worry, older people worry, younger people worry. So it's a universal experience that we all have, but it's often difficult to really, if you really think about it, what exactly is worry? So before we get into a definition of worry itself, I want to talk about what happens when worry gets excessive. Now, in psychology, we like to attach diagnostic labels to lots of things. And there's a condition called generalized anxiety disorder. And essentially what generalized anxiety disorder is a condition characterized by chronic, excessive, difficult to control worry about a range of different topics. So it's not just worry about, one thing for a few weeks. It's chronic worry. It's worry about lots of things. The worries tend to be what I call sticky, in that once a person starts to worry about a particular topic, it's difficult for them to shift gears away from that topic. The worries tend to be excessive in terms of intensity and excessive in terms of scope. But the content of the worry itself actually isn't that much different than what pretty much everybody else worries about. It's just the intensity of the worry that's different. And because of the chronic nature of worry in generalized anxiety disorder, this can also be associated with a lot of physical symptoms as well. So things like muscle tension, vague physical complaints like headaches, stomach problems, fatigue, irritability, concentration problems, sleep difficulties. So it can affect a broad range of a person's functioning and how they feel. In fact, generalized anxiety disorder is one of the most expensive mental health conditions on our healthcare system because lots of people show up at their family physician's office complaining of vague physical complaints, stomach problems, headaches, fatigue. They get worked up, lots of blood work, tests, all sorts of things, and there's nothing there physically. But it's usually a manifestation of the physical impacts of this chronic worry. Now, in terms of how common this is, about 1 in 20 people will experience generalized anxiety disorder in their life. So that's 5%. In any given year, 3% of the population will meet diagnostic criteria for generalized anxiety disorder, which means that at this moment, there's 5,100 people on the North Shore that meet diagnostic criteria for generalized anxiety disorder. And that's sort of chronic, excessive worry that we would diagnose as a sort of a clinical issue. But I don't really like to think about worry as either excessive worry or non-excessive worry. Worry tends to fall on a continuum. Where one end of the continuum are people who don't really worry that much, have low levels of worry, and the other end of the continuum, you have people with high levels of worry. And so generalized anxiety disorder falls on that high worry end of the spectrum. But then there's a whole bunch of people here who may not meet full diagnostic criteria for generalized anxiety disorder, but who do worry a lot. And they do experience a lot of worry, and the worry is problematic and concerning for them, but they may just not meet sort of GAD criteria. So 5% of the population may experience generalized anxiety disorder, but there's a whole bunch of other people who experience problematic worry. And we all experience worry as well. So, what is worry? Worry is a thought process. It's a collection of thoughts which occur together in relation to future negative events. So the key is, worry is a thought process. It's something you do in your head. You're thinking about something. And it's not just typically a single thought, it's multiple thoughts. Either the same thought looping over and over and over again, or a chaining or a spiraling of thoughts. And it's usually always related to future negative events. Rarely do people worry about good things happening to them. And rarely do people worry about the past. Now, sometimes people will tell me, oh no, I worry about stuff from the past. But usually what they mean is they worry about how the things in the past are going to affect them in the future. It's not so much worry about the past itself. The emotional result, the emotional outcome of this thought process of worry is anxiety. And this is a key point. Worry and anxiety are not the same thing. And the thing is, people will often use the terms interchangeably, but they're actually different. Worry is a cognitive process. Anxiety is the emotional result of that cognitive process. So, what's anxiety then? Well, to explain anxiety, I want you to meet Bob. Now, Bob's like a lot of us, just sort of going on in life, focused on his cell phone, not really paying too much to things going on around him. Now, unbeknownst to Bob, a polar bear sneaks up behind him. And Bob, upon seeing the polar bear, experiences a variety of emotional and physiological reactions. Emotionally, he's going to feel tremendous fear. He's going to be terribly scared of coming face to face with a polar bear, probably because he wasn't expecting it. He's also going to experience a whole bunch of physiological reactions as well. And these physiological reactions are all designed to help make Bob temporarily stronger or faster to either fight the bear or to run away from it. So things like accelerated heart rate, increased muscle tension, more rapid breathing, adrenaline rush, all of these things are actually really adaptive and really helpful to get Bob out of the situation. So that cluster of emotional and physiological symptoms, that's what we call anxiety. Anxiety is kind of your body's early warning system, threat system. It's the alarm that says, there's danger here, you need to get out. And so when that anxiety response kicks in, Bob takes off, and he escapes the polar bear. So anxiety is a really adaptive thing when faced with actual threat and danger. But worry and anxiety are not the same thing. So people often use the terms interchangeably, but it's important to recognize there's a difference between the two. So what we're focusing on tonight is worry, that cognitive process that leads to anxiety. So I want to talk about a model of worry, a model to understand sort of how worry works. And we're going to start with just sort of a basic bare bones model of worry, and as we go along here, we're going to be adding lots of components to this. So worry usually starts with some sort of trigger situation. Now the thing is, pretty much anything can be a trigger. Triggers can be internal. They can be thoughts. I can be thinking about an argument I had with a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago. They can be physical sensations. I wake up one morning, I've got this wicked headache. Triggers can be external. I get a phone call, I check the call display, it's work calling. And I think, okay, well, what's going on? Why are they calling me? So the trigger leads to what we call the what if question. What if my friend is really mad at me about that conversation that we had and doesn't want to be friends with me anymore? What if it's a tumor? What if work's calling and they hated the job I did on that project and I'm going to be fired? So what happens is you get the trigger leads to a what if question. Now, it usually doesn't just stop at one what if question. I mean, rarely does it happen. I wake up in the morning, I've got this wicked headache. I think to myself, well, what if this is a tumor? And my next thought is, well, what am I going to have for breakfast? Doesn't usually work that way. Usually it's either the same thought gets looped over and over again, or one what if leads to another what if, which leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another. So you get this chaining and spiraling of thoughts, often in a sort of a worst-case scenario building type of thing. And that's the process that we call worry. So it's this collection and this chaining of what-if thoughts. And as we mentioned, the emotional outcome that results from worry is anxiety. Now, for people who worry a lot, they go through this process a lot, day after day after day. Trigger, what if, worry, anxiety. Trigger, what if, worry, anxiety. Trigger, what if, worry, anxiety. So by the end of the day, it's not uncommon that people will describe feeling demoralized and exhausted. Demoralized in part because all the person's ever really thinking about is all the bad things that can happen. It's hard to get really excited or enthused about something because even if you get excited about something, you start thinking about all of the negative things that could happen from that as well. So it's really kind of demoralizing to never be able to look ahead and be really kind of excited about anything because all you ever see is all the bad things that can happen. And the exhaustion comes on a couple of points. One is mental exhaustion, right? Because your mind's always going. It won't shut off, always thinking about something. And so mentally it can be really exhausting, but also physically it can be exhausting. We know that worry causes people to experience a fair bit of muscle tension and physiological symptoms. And so you're walking around all day with this high level of muscle tension, also can interfere with sleep. All of those things can contribute to a physical feeling of just fatigue and exhaustion. And so that's our basic bare bones model, our basic engine of worry. And so what are some of the things that keep this worry engine going? Well, the more tired and demoralized a person gets, it's much easier to come up with what-if questions. Much easier to generate those initial what-ifs, which start off the whole scenario-building process. Additionally, what can happen for people who worry excessively is they can get really good at worrying. They can be highly efficient worriers to the point that they may not even recognize that they're worrying. I often get this experience where people will come and they'll see me and they'll say, I'm not worrying about anything. I just have this free-floating anxiety. That's a really common term I'll hear. Well, you get into it a bit and you recognize actually it's not just there out of the blue. There's a lot of worrying that's going on. You're just not aware that you're doing it. You've become really efficient at it. Oops. There we go. Ineffective worry management techniques. A common one I'll often see here is a person keeps himself really busy. So one of the ways they try and manage or deal with their worry is as long as I'm keeping myself occupied with something, as long as I'm focusing on a particular project, I'm not worrying. So I just keep doing that. The problem is that can be really exhausting because you're always having to do something. And then at the end of this long day where you've constantly been doing things to keep your mind occupied, you try to go to sleep, what do you think happens? Well, now the worry's there because it has time. So this aspect of worry management that involves just keeping yourself busy, that's one of the things that can also contribute to that feeling of exhaustion because I'm always on the go. And then there's the role of uncertainty. And I want to take some time to talk a little bit about the role that uncertainty plays in worry because this is kind of a big topic and a big part of what really drives this worry engine. And so uncertainty plays a role in what I call the worry fuel. So if you think about our basic model of worry as the worry engine, there's this fuel in the background. And this fuel, you can see it says IU everywhere. The IU stands for something we call intolerance of uncertainty. And essentially what intolerance of uncertainty is, it's kind of like a psychological allergy. If you think about how allergies work, if I'm allergic to dust and I walk into a room, all it takes is for there to be just a little bit of dust in that room. And that little bit of dust leads to a big allergic reaction on my part. Sneezy, watery eyes, that sort of thing. Where somebody else walks into that exact same room, and they don't happen to be allergic, they walk into that exact same room, they have no reaction at all. The same thing happens with uncertainty. What we know is that people who tend to worry a lot tend to really be uncomfortable with uncertainty. And so you can think of uncertainty as falling on a continuum, where on one end of the continuum are people who are highly tolerant of uncertainty. These are the people who can travel to Europe with a one-way ticket and a quarter in their pocket. And they see it as a great adventure, right? They have no idea where they're going to go. They have no idea how long they're going to be gone for. They have no idea how they're going to get around, even how they're going to get home. But yeah, you know what? This is going to be great. Whereas on the other end of the continuum are people who are highly intolerant of uncertainty. If they're going to Europe, they have a clearly laid out itinerary. They know exactly where they're going to go, exactly where they're going to be on what days. They've researched and planned exactly where they're going to go on those days, how they're going to get around to those various places that they're going to go, backup plans in case it's raining or the weather isn't very good on those days, et cetera, et cetera. Those people are highly intolerant of uncertainty. So, in terms of how intolerance of uncertainty affects or contributes to worry, I like to think of it sort of like a lens through which a person views the world. So we've got Bob here again. And so Bob is faced with an uncertain situation. And so what Bob does is he's looking at this uncertain situation. What just happened? Oh, there we go. The uncertain situation is the slides just disappeared. And so Bob is interpreting this uncertain situation through this intolerance of uncertainty lens. And so he sees this situation, the intolerance of uncertainty lens, then bends his perception and his prediction of what he thinks is going to happen to be a negative outcome. So Bob's facing the situation. It's the intolerance of uncertainty lens that gets him to start thinking about all of the negative outcomes that can possibly happen in this uncertain situation. And so it's not so much the uncertainty that Bob's reacting to or that Bob's uncomfortable with. It's what he feels that uncertainty represents, which is all of the various negative outcomes that can happen. But we can also take a look at the situation and say, well, yeah, okay, sometimes uncertainty can lead to negative outcomes, but hey, uncertainty can also lead to neutral outcomes as well. And sometimes uncertainty can even lead to positive outcomes. Call these happy accidents. So that's the possible range of outcomes for uncertainty, but this intolerance of uncertainty lens really prevents a person from considering those options. And the only options that are really considered are the negative ones. And so uncertainty becomes really scary to people because that uncertainty means bad things are going to happen, or at least that's how they feel it. So for someone with intolerance of uncertainty, or someone who's intolerant of uncertainty, there's this dilemma. There's these two things that are going on. One is I'm intolerant of uncertainty, and the second is there's uncertainty in the world. And I have to try to reconcile these two things somehow. So what will often happen is people who are intolerant of uncertainty will try to work really, really hard to make their world more certain. They'll work really hard to try and eliminate uncertainty in their world as a way of trying to make things more comfortable for themselves. The problem is you can never fully eliminate uncertainty in the world. And so it just becomes this futile exercise in trying to get rid of uncertainty, but it's not actually helping. It's kind of like you're at the bottom of a pit and you want to get out of the pit. You come up with this plan to get out of the pit, which involves picking up a shovel and digging. So you're putting lots of work into it. You're putting a whole lot of effort into it, but it's not actually getting you out of the pit. So it's not uncommon for people who worry a lot, who experience this intolerance of uncertainty, who will do all sorts of things that they're desperately doing to try and manage their worry, but it's not actually giving them any comfort or any reduction in their worry overall. And so I want to talk about various examples of intolerance of uncertainty. Essentially, these are the behavioral manifestations of how this intolerance of uncertainty might look in terms of what a person does. So the first is avoidance. And avoidance can take multiple different forms. So avoiding doing certain things, finding imaginary obstacles or reasons not to do certain things, and procrastinating. The idea behind this is it gives you a temporary state of certainty. If I'm not certain how my friend's going to respond if I call them back after that big fight, well, by avoiding making that phone call, I have some certainty right now that my friend's not yelling at me at this moment and that the relationship isn't over at this moment. So I have a certain amount of certainty. So I'll just avoid things that I'm uncertain about, and so what that means is right now, nothing bad's happening to me. Now, it's only temporary, and you probably know that procrastination doesn't really work, but it's something that people will do to give themselves a sense of certainty or control. Wanting to do everything yourself, not delegating tasks to anyone else. The idea behind this is if I'm doing everything myself, I know it's being done right. I know it's being done the way I think it should be done. The moment you delegate to somebody else, the moment you have to rely on somebody else to do something, it introduces this whole new variable of uncertainty. Well, what if they don't do it? What if they don't do it the way I would do it? What if they do it wrong? What if they make a big mess of it and I just have to fix it? You know what? It's just easier if I do it myself. Only partially committing yourself to a relationship, a job, a project. This is somewhat of a more subtle form of intolerance of uncertainty, but I see it a lot, and it's actually quite sad in that a person may be in a relationship, but they're not willing to fully commit to that relationship because they're concerned what will happen if this relationship doesn't work out. So it's almost like they're hedging their bets against the relationship not working, sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. That way, if the relationship doesn't work out, well, I wasn't fully committed to it anyway. Also see this with students as well, who don't really fully commit or fully put a whole lot of effort or energy into their studies, because if they really did put 100% into their studies and they failed, then they'd feel really devastated. It'd almost be confirmation that they can't succeed. Whereas if I don't really study that hard and I fail, well, it's because I didn't study that hard. So it's almost like that built-in hedging my bets and protecting myself just in case things don't work out. Doing too many things at once, spreading yourself too thin. The idea here is I don't want to miss out on any opportunities. I don't want to say no to anything. I want to keep my options open. So I'll have a hand in a whole bunch of different pots. I won't fully commit to any of them, but I just want to keep my options available. Other examples of intolerance of uncertainty, information seeking. Looking for a lot of information before proceeding to do something. If I'm going to buy that digital camera, I am going to research the heck out of that digital camera. I'm going to read every single review ever written about that digital camera. I'm going to read the reviews about all the other digital cameras because I want to be certain that I'm making the perfect choice. It's almost like the person's searching for that one piece of information that's going to give them that certainty that this is the right decision to make. And so as you can imagine, this really kills efficiency. It means that it's so difficult to make a decision, to commit to things, because I just need a little bit more information to know I'm doing the right thing, to be certain I'm doing the right thing. And then once you make a decision, second-guessing the decision that you've already made because you're no longer certain it's the right decision. So reviewing that decision over and over again to try and get reconfirmation that it's the right decision. Again, this is all about eliminating uncertainty and being certain. Reassurance seeking. Asking others for reassurance to make sure that you're doing the right thing. Well, what would you have done in this situation? Well, what do you think about that? Do you think I reacted okay? Do you think I overreacted? Could you read this over and tell me what you think? Do you love me? Do you still love me? There could be subtle ways of seeking reassurance as well. I love you, hint, hint, right? Seeing what the person's reaction's going to be. So the reassurance seeking is all designed to get a sense of comfort. It's like you got this big bucket and you're trying to fill the bucket with water, but the problem is the bucket's got a big hole in the bottom, so you're constantly pouring water into this bucket and it's never enough. You can imagine the effects that this has on relationships. I told you I'm not cheating on you. I'm not cheating on you. I'm not cheating on you, but constant reassurance seeking. Double checking things or redoing them because you're no longer certain you did them right. So I'll see this a lot with students who know their stuff, but they are the ones that will stay to the absolute last minute of an exam. They may have finished an hour earlier, but they're going to review and review and review and review because they want to be certain that they've got everything right. Double checking an email before you send it. Spell check it or read it over a few times, think about it a bit. Am I coming across right? Is there tone in this email? Is there not tone? Again, something like this destroys efficiency, makes a person a lot less efficient in terms of being able to get things done. Overprotecting others or doing things for them. This is a big one for parents. And this is sort of a variant of that earlier one that we were talking about, which is not delegating tasks to other people, except in this case, the tasks that aren't being delegated is letting the person take care of themselves. So I really want to make sure that my child's okay, so I'll do all these things for them so I have certainty that they're going to be okay. So what ends up happening with these intolerance of uncertainty behaviors is they have a lot of unpleasant effects or unpleasant results for the person. First is decreased confidence. If you think about it, if I have confidence that I know what I'm doing, I'm not going to be constantly asking people if they think I'm doing the right thing. I'm not going to have to excessively prepare for this presentation about something that I already know. But the act of doing those things actually serves to undermine confidence. It's almost like I'm telling myself I don't know what I'm doing by seeking reassurance or over-rehearsing something. So this intolerance of uncertainty can have a real negative effect on a person's sense of confidence, sense of, I know what I'm doing. We've also touched on this a few times. It decreases efficiency. Just everything becomes a lot slower because you have to analyze everything to death before you do it. You have to analyze everything while you're doing it, and then you have to analyze everything after you've done it. Perfectionism. If you think about perfectionism, it's people want to have everything perfect, everything the right way. Well, if things are perfect, you have certainty they've been done right. So it's not uncommon to see perfectionism and worry together. Interpersonal difficulties and conflict. Probably have a pretty good idea of how this might result, particularly from excessive reassurance seeking. Please contact me once you get to the hotel. And once you're at the hotel, please let me know once you've checked in just so I can make sure that everything's okay. And I want you to contact me every day in the morning so I know you're okay. Maybe you can give me a call at noon, and how about in the evening? And so you can get a sense of how this might negatively affect relationships. No, let me put the dishes in the dishwasher. Oh, look, I'm just going to put the dish. No, I'll do it. I'll do it because you're not going to do it right and the dishes aren't going to get clean. You can imagine all the different ways that this can lead to problems in relationships. It can also lead to a person being very passive in relationships as well. If I'm always agreeable, if I always agree with what the other person's saying, or I do whatever the other person wants, it increases the likelihood that they're going to like me. If I disagree with someone, that leads to a certain amount of uncertainty as to how might they respond if I disagree with them. So you know what? I'll just agree with whatever anybody says. So it's not uncommon for people to be very passive in relationships. Pretty obvious lack of spontaneity in life. I don't like to do things off the cuff. I need to have a plan. I need to know exactly what's going on. Let's talk about a plan for Saturday as opposed to just wait and see and let's just figure out what we're going to do. No, I need to know what we're going to do ahead of time. And then there's the whole control freak aspect, which is I need to be in control. Because when I'm in control, I know what's going on. I feel much more in control when I know what's going on, so just let me be in control. I have certainty. I like that certainty. So our model stands here. We have our basic engine of worry. We have the fuel that's driving this worry engine. There's another role or another factor that can contribute to worry or keep worry going, and this relates to beliefs, and specifically beliefs about the usefulness of worry. Now, to explain how this works a bit, I want to talk about the power of beliefs. And to sort of walk through this, I want to use an example. I really like my car. I love my car. And so I really want to take care of my car. And one of the things I do to take care of my car is I ensure that I change the oil in my car every 5,000 kilometers. Because I believe that changing the oil in my car every 5,000 kilometers is good for the long-term maintenance of my vehicle. Help prevent costly repairs, helps the car run better. And since I love my car, I want to do the best for my car. Now, one day, a friend of mine, who knows everything about cars, this friend of mine pulls me aside and he says to me, hey, Rami, that oil change every 5,000 kilometers thing, it's a scam. It's a scam by the oil companies to just get people to buy more and more oil. Nothing's actually happening to the oil in your vehicle. Well, if I believed my friend, think about how that would affect my behavior. I'd probably stop changing the oil in my car. And the reason why I stopped changing the oil in my car is because I no longer feel that it's serving any useful purpose. So we do things, we behave in certain ways because we feel that they're serving some benefit. Now, relating this to worry, what we know is that people who worry a lot tend to believe that worry is actually serving some purpose, some usefulness to them. They're getting some benefit from worrying. Now, this is a bit of a weird concept when I first bring it up with clients, and they tell me, this is crazy. I don't think that worry is doing anything. If I thought that worry was helping me, I wouldn't be here. Worry is just causing me a whole lot of problems. But as we get into it a bit, it's not uncommon for people to recognize that there actually are some sort of subconscious or unconscious beliefs that people will have that worry is actually serving some benefit for them. And so here are some examples of some of these common worry beliefs. The notion that worry helps solve problems. The idea is if I'm worrying about a problem, I'm keeping that problem in my mind. And it's sort of the act of worrying is helping me work through that problem in my head. And so worrying benefits me by helping me solve problems. Worry motivates me to get things done. It's that sort of kick in the pants I need to get going on things. If I don't worry about things, I want to get around to it. Whatever, I'm not particularly worried about it, so I'll deal with it when I deal with it. But it's that worry that's that motivator to get me going. Worry can protect me or worry can prepare me emotionally for worst case scenarios. If I worry about something bad happening, and that something bad were to happen, it's almost like I've prepared myself emotionally for it ahead of time, so I won't be caught off guard. I won't be surprised. I will have sort of seen it coming, and that will have prepared me. So that's a good thing. That preparation is a good thing or a benefit of worrying. At a sort of more superstitious level, people can sometimes hold the belief that worry can prevent bad things from happening. Almost kind of on a superstitious level, that if I worry about something bad happening, the bad thing won't happen. Or on the flip side of it, if I don't worry about something bad happening, so if I don't worry about my presentation, it will be that time that the universe will, give me a slap across the head and everything will go badly. So worry helps prevent those bad things from happening. And finally, this is again a big one with parents. Worry is a positive personality characteristic. What kind of person would I be? What kind of mother would I be if I didn't worry about my children? What kind of employee would I be if I didn't worry about my job? What kind of student would I be if I didn't worry about my studies? So it's the act of worrying represents a sense of conscientiousness, a sense of care, a sense of responsibility. So as long as a person holds these beliefs, they're going to be motivated to worry because it seems like, based on these beliefs, worry is actually serving a lot of purpose, a lot of benefit from worrying. Now the thing is, we don't really have time to get into exactly why this is the case. Worry actually doesn't do any of these things. People may think it does, but there's all sorts of reasons. And if you spend some time thinking about it, you can probably come up with lots of reasons why, or lots of ideas why worry actually doesn't serve these purposes. So I want to sort of switch gears a little bit now and to start talking about different types of worry. And we tend to categorize worry into two types. Type 1 worries are worries about actual, current, real problems. So problems can often be a big trigger for people to worry. Now, if you think about the nature of problems and you think about uncertainty, this makes a lot of sense. Because problems, by definition, are things that we're uncertain about. We're uncertain about what the right thing to do, what the solution is for these problems. If we know exactly what we need to do, it's not a problem. It's just a series of steps I need to do, but it's not actually a problem. But problems, by definition, are things that we don't know the solution to. And so there's a whole lot of uncertainty encompassed in that. And that can lead to a lot of worry. So what often tends to happen is that people who tend to worry a lot don't really engage in problem solving when faced with problems. They tend to avoid problems, and we'll talk about why exactly they do that. But this isn't due to a deficit of problem-solving ability. What we know is that people who tend to worry a lot are just as good at solving problems as people who don't tend to worry a lot. The difference is they tend not to use their problem-solving skills. And this is due to something called negative problem orientation, or NPO. The way I like to think about negative problem orientation, it's kind of like the garage door. As long as the garage door is down, it doesn't matter what you have in your garage. You could have the Ferrari of problem-solving skills. It's not going to get out of the garage. You can have a tricycle of problem-solving skills. It's not going to get out of the garage. So this negative problem orientation is what prevents a person from really using their problem-solving skills. So what is negative problem orientation? Well, it's a series of kind of negative views about problems in general. So I hate problems. I shouldn't have problems. Other well-adjusted, healthy people don't have problems the way I have problems. I'm not very good at solving problems. My problems never seem to work out. Problems are bad. Problems are threatening. Nothing good ever comes from problems. Now, if you were to hold these beliefs about problems, there's going to be a number of consequences when you're actually faced with problems. These consequences can be emotional. So if I hold this negative problem orientation towards problems and I'm faced with a problem, well, it's pretty easy to understand how I might get sort of frustrated, anxious, or nervous when a problem comes up. There's also mental or thought consequences. I may see problems as unfair or threatening, or problems certainly give me more things to worry about. They're the trigger that gets me worrying. And then there are behavioral consequences to this negative problem orientation when faced with problems. I'm going to have a greater tendency to avoid problems or procrastinate in problem solving. I see them as threatening. I don't really want to deal with it, so I'll just avoid dealing with it. So how might this affect worry? Well, if you think about worry and worry about problems, one of the best ways of managing worry about a problem is to solve the problem. But if you have this negative problem orientation, it interferes with you actually being able to solve the problem. So suppose I have a little problem. sort of a small problem starting to build. Maybe it's a problem with a coworker. And I have this negative problem orientation, and so I take a negative problem orientation approach to dealing with this problem, which is to ignore it, sort of bury my head in the sand, try and avoid dealing with it. And what happens to problems when you avoid dealing with them? They go away? No. They tend to fester and get bigger and bigger and bigger until they become a crisis. And now I'm faced with a crisis, so I have to act. And I have to act sort of in this crisis situation, probably with a lot of anxiety, spontaneously coming up with the first thing that comes to mind. Those are not a good set of circumstances under which effective problem solving takes place. And so I'm probably not going to deal with this problem very well, which is then going to reinforce my view that my problems are worse than everybody else's, I'm no good at solving problems, and problems are terrible things. And so the cycle just keeps continuing. So if we think about our model, ineffective problem solving plays a role here in a couple of ways. One, it tends to contribute to the frequency or the onset of what-if questions. And the more anxious a person is, the more ineffective their problem solving becomes. So then, now we'll turn our attention to what we call type 2 problem, or type 2 worries, which are worries about future or potential problems. Problems that haven't happened yet, problems that may never happen. This usually involves negative, worst-case scenario building about kind of the core fears that a person has. These type 2 worries tend to be around those fears that really hit at the core and some of the scariest thoughts that people can have. Sort of the core deep fears that people will often experience. So these can be things like failure. Failure academically, failure in life, relationship breakups, losing your job, being unable to support your family, developing a life-threatening illness or disease, being involved in a motor vehicle accident, or somebody you care about being involved in a motor vehicle accident, or dying, either yourself or somebody that you care about. These type 2 worries tend to hit at those hot-button fears that we have. And so what often happens, or how people often react to these types of worries, is to engage in something called cognitive avoidance. And essentially what this is because these thoughts are really scary and upsetting, there's a natural response to just want to avoid them or suppress these thoughts. So I have this thought about my family being killed in a motor vehicle accident. Oh, that's awful. I don't want to think about it. Stop thinking about it. There's all sorts of ways people can engage in this thought suppression. I'll just turn my attention to something else. I'll distract myself with some sort of activity, maybe have a drink or use drugs. All ways of just getting out of my head a bit, getting these thoughts out of my head. But how effective is this thought suppression? To sort of test this, what I'll often do with clients is to do a little experiment with them. And what the experiment is I'll get them to spend 1 minute thinking about anything they want to think about. And usually they sort of end up thinking about being on a nice, relaxing beach somewhere, some tropical island. But then the instruction is, in that 1 minute, I want you to try really, really hard not to think about a pink elephant. So think about whatever you want. Imagine that wonderful beach, that beautiful, serene environment, but just don't think about a pink elephant. And so what invariably happens is the person's, okay, 1 minute, not hard. So you start thinking about, and they're imagining them on the beach, and then, it's a pink elephant. Okay, that's silly. And they push the pink elephant out of their head, and then, there's another one. And there's another, and another. And the pink elephants are everywhere, and they just can't stop thinking about a pink elephant. Then I usually follow it up with the question, okay, in the past week, how many times has the thought of a pink elephant come to your mind? They usually say, well, never. Okay, well, how much effort were you putting in the past week to not thinking about a pink elephant? Well, I wasn't putting any effort into not thinking about a pink elephant. Well, isn't that funny? In 1 minute of trying not to think about a pink elephant, all you could think about was a pink elephant. But in 1 week of putting no effort into thinking about a pink elephant, you didn't think about it at all. And this is what we call the paradox of thought suppression. The more you try not to think about something, the more you end up thinking about it. So now relating this to those type 2 worries, because these thoughts, these worries are really unpleasant, I don't want to think about them, I try and suppress them, I try and push them out of my mind, all that's really doing is bringing the thoughts up more and more and more. So in our model, this is where cognitive avoidance fits in. So cognitive avoidance can contribute to the what-ifs and those type 2 worries, and the more anxious we are, the more we want to try and suppress or try and avoid thinking about those things. And so you can see the model gets quite complicated. And this is one of the things I actually really like about working with worry is that it's not simple. It's actually fairly complicated. There are a lot of things to it, but they all make sense. And they all make sense if you understand how they all work together. So this is where sort of our model ends, sort of. Because if you look at the worry, or the model of the worry that we have up here, this is all what's happening internally within a person. But there's other factors that can also play a role to contribute to this worry experience as well. Life events, life stressors, job loss, relationship breakup, having a new kid, mood states can play a role. And all of these external factors can also contribute to a person experiencing worry. So it's complicated. So I don't usually start out with this model when I'm working with people who worry a lot because they'll just get worried about it. So we usually start slow and sort of add the components to it because it makes sense if you go slowly and sort of understand it as you're going along. So it takes us to the last few minutes here, and don't really have a lot of time to get into exactly what you should do, but I want to sort of give some sort of bare bones tips for what to do to manage worry then, based on our model, based on the understanding of how worry works. The first and the biggest thing I encourage people to do is embrace uncertainty. Get to know uncertainty. He's not that bad. Once you get to know him, you'll like him a bit, probably. Take some risks. Now, when I talk about risks, I'm not talking about bungee jumping. I'm talking about do some things that you may not do. Speak up at that meeting where maybe you disagree with everybody else and your worry is telling you don't say anything. Say something. Be willing to take small risks in your life. Don't procrastinate. You know what procrastination is going to do? It's just going to prolong the worry and prolong the experience that you're having. Speak your mind. I've already touched on that. Do new things. Embracing uncertainty isn't all about eliminating anxiety or addressing anxiety. It can be about exploring new things, doing new things in your life, having new experiences, going to a restaurant you've never been to before, watching a movie you know nothing about. These are all opportunities to do things you're uncertain about. Maybe you'll have some of those happy accidents I talked about earlier. Go with the flow more often without having to know exactly what's going to happen. Be okay with some surprises. Be okay with the wait and see. And then I have this question up here, and this is one I always challenge my clients to do, because I find if people do this, it can be one of the most sort of profound changes a person can make, which is to imagine the following question tattooed to the frontal lobe of your brain. So you're kind of filtering your world through this question. If I were more tolerant of uncertainty, what would I do in this situation? Because that question gives you a guide for what you should do if you're worried about something. So if I were more tolerant of uncertainty, would I return that phone call right away, or would I put it off and return the phone call next week? If I were more tolerant of uncertainty, would I tell my partner that what they're doing is really bothering me, or would I just bottle it up and not say anything? If I were more tolerant of uncertainty, would I volunteer to do that task at work that maybe I'm not sure about, or would I let somebody else do it? So by using this question as a guide, it can really begin to shift how you orient yourself towards uncertainty. It can have a profound effect on worry and the impact that uncertainty has on worry. Recognize that worrying actually doesn't serve any useful purpose. Worrying is a thought process that happens in your head. It has no effect on the world around you. Worry doesn't solve your problems, doesn't motivate you, it doesn't make you a good person, it doesn't prepare you for the bad things that are going to happen, and it doesn't prevent those bad things from happening. It is merely a series of thoughts that you're having about bad things that you think might happen. That's all worry does. Recognize problems early on. Pay attention, look for them. If you notice you're feeling anxious, well, ask yourself, okay, is there a problem here that I'm not dealing with? Is there something here that I'm not addressing that I could be addressing? Normalize problems. Recognize that everybody's got problems. Beautiful people in Hollywood have problems. Rich people have problems. Everybody's got problems. So there's nothing unusual about me because I have problems. And look at the problems not as threats, but as opportunities. What is the opportunity in this problem, as opposed to just thinking about all the things that could go wrong? And finally, thinking through your worries. And what I mean by this is, don't try and avoid them. Don't try and run away from them. Don't try and push them out of your head. If they're going to be there, let them be there. Not that you have to sort of feed them, but don't suppress them. Think the worries all the way through to the worst case scenario. And if you have to, think about, well, how would I deal with that? Or would I be able to deal with that? Well, you probably would. Just don't run away from those worries. Because the more you run away from those worries, the more they're going to stick to you. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The more you push down on it, the more force there is going to be coming up. So just let it be there. So wrapping up in terms of resources, if you're interested in sort of learning more about worry or generalized anxiety disorder, you can go onto my website. There's a resource library page. There's a page on generalized anxiety disorder and worry. There's lots of information sheets and links to websites and videos. All the information is there, freely available. At the North Shore Stress and Anxiety Clinic, on our adult resources website, there are resources about good books that sort of cover this stuff. The Anxiety BC website is a fabulous website. If any of you are interested in anxiety, definitely check out the Anxiety BC website, because they've got tons of information and really great videos and all sorts of really good stuff on the Anxiety BC website. And in terms of this talk, the slides for this talk, all the slides you've been seeing, they're going to be available on the North Shore Stress and Anxiety Clinic website for download, just on the homepage. So you'll see there's sort of a news and events section. You can just click and download the slides as well. So, I've seen some of you taking notes, and then others who haven't taken notes. Those of you who haven't taken notes, you can have the notes if you want them. And as Todd and Ken pointed out, this is the start of a series of talks. Here with St. Timothy's in Sutherland, but also a series of talks with other community partners as well. So in February and April, February at Larson Elementary School, and April here at Sutherland, Dr. Kimberly De Silva is going to be talking about worry and anxiety in children. In March at the Lynn Valley Town Center, Drs. Kristen Buer and Sarah Newth are talking about sleep hygiene and tips for getting a good night's sleep. In April and June, April at Carson Graham and June here at Sutherland, Dr. Martin Davidson is doing a talk on getting along with teenagers, which I'm very curious about. And then in May at the Capilano Library, Dr. Michelle Herring, who's here in the front row, will be doing a talk on understanding depression, similar to the talk that I did here last year. So this is just the start of what we hope to be a series of talks that we do, not just this year, but in subsequent years as well. So I encourage you, if you're interested in any of these, they're all free to attend. Feel free to go to as many of these as you would like. Please feel free to let anybody else that you know who might be interested in these talks, let them know about the talks as well. At the back there, as you're leaving, there are what are called these little rack cards that we had developed that sort of have just some tips for managing worry on them, if you just want to pick one of those up as you leave, as well as a brochure for the clinic as well. So all that being said, I'm done my portion. If there's any questions, maybe we'll take questions for 10, 15 minutes or so, and then